Okay, let's call to order our board meeting here. I want to welcome everyone. Melissa, shall we roll call?
Ms. Avila Frias. Mr. Brown for Treasurer Chung.
Ms. Brown for Treasurer Chung.
Ms. Gallagher.
Here.
Dr. Imbassiani.
Here.
Mr. Hunter.
Here.
Ms. Johnson Hall.
Here.
Mr. Metcalf. Ms. Hoffman for Secretary Podesta.
Here.
Mr. Prince. Mr. Russell.
Present.
Ms. Sotelo. Mr. Gunning.
Present.
Mr. Alex. Ms. Jacqueline Hernandez.
Jacqueline Hernandez for Department of Finance, for Director of Financial Audit.
And Ms. Patterson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from July 12th, 2018 Board of Directors meeting. Is there any corrections or edits? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
There's a motion, is there a second? Been moved and seconded. It's roll call vote.
I'll start again. Ms. Avila Frias. Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher.
Aye.
Dr. Imbassiani.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Abstain.
Ms. Johnson Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf.
Yes, good job.
You don't know what you're voting on.
Safe.
Ms. Hoffman.
Aye.
Mr. Prince. Mr. Russell.
Abstain.
Ms. Sotelo. Mr. Gunning.
Abstain.
We do not have enough members to pass that motion, but we do have some members that might be arriving late. Maybe we could try
Okay.
again later.
Why don't we hold off on that then?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think I'm gonna relinquish my time to you, Tia.
And I will relinquish my time to Mr. Pedro.
So we can go to item number 4. Government Finance Officers Award Presentation.
Yes, yes. Well, good morning, Chair Gunning and members of the board. I'm Don Kavir, Agency Chief Deputy Director. And previously, we've communicated to the board that the CalHFA 2016-17 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report had received the award for excellence in financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association, commonly known as the GFOA. This is CalHFA's first ever award for financial reporting, and today we actually have the award here to share with the board.
Yeah.
This is it right here. It's very heavy. I'm going to go ahead and pass it around for the board to look at.
Thanks.
We also have a video presentation from the GFOA that I'm going to play for you. It's very brief, but we're going to play that for you in a minute. But before I do that, I also wanted to mention to the board that we were also recently notified that the same GFOA has acknowledged and issued an award for our PAFR, which is the condensed version of the CAFR as well. So we're very excited about that.
Good job, Don.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and play the GFOA award presentation, hopefully here.
Hello, I'm Chris Morrow, the Executive Director of the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States of Finance Officers Association of the United States. It's my pleasure to announce that the California Housing Finance Agency has won the GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Financial Reporting for the fiscal year 2017 Comprehensive Financial Annual Report. Comprehensive Financial. This is your first year winning the certificate, which demonstrates your commitment to making financial reports available to the public in a manner that is organized, readable, and transparent. I wanted to congratulate Tia Boatman Patterson on her office's accomplishment, as well as Donald Adhere and all of the people involved in the preparation of the CAFR. At GFOA, we believe that meeting the high standards required to earn the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting is a mark of distinction of which you should be very, very proud. In fact, by winning the award, California Housing Finance Agency joins with only 130 other standalone business-type special-purpose governments in the state of California that have won this prestigious award. To learn more about GFOA and about this and our other award programs, please go to gfoa.org. Thank you, and congratulations again on this impressive achievement. Hello,
Caught up in a loop.
I really can't take credit for this. This was
Yes, you
Don
can.
and his people, and he was serious about that open, transparent fiscal reporting, and he worked them. And so to be able to put our data in a readable format and to be able to present that and actually work to make sure that that was happening and then actually go out and actually then win the award, it was quite impressive. So I have to give a shout out to Lori Hamahashi and her entire
You're
staff.
stealing my thunder.
And,
We're gonna
I'll let Don.
So, I mean, T and I couldn't be more happy with the staff's performance. They've just done a great job, and without them, none of this would have been possible. So I think it's more important that we acknowledge their hard work. And I've asked several of the key members of the Fiscal Services Division, our Marketing Division, and our Financing Division to be here today and to be acknowledged by you, the board. And so I'd like to ask the staff to stand as I call their name and remain standing so that you can be acknowledged. So first of all, Comptroller Lori Hamahashi from Fiscal Services. Deputy Comptroller Oksana Glashenko. Accounting Administrator 2, Sandy Wan. From Marketing and Communications, our Director, Kathy Phillips. Public Information Officer, Eric Johnson. And from Financing Officer, Douglas Kincaid. Now, I just also want to mention that many of their colleagues also contributed to this as well, but these guys were very key members of making this happen. So I just think they deserve all the credit in the world.
Yeah.
And along with that, I also want to acknowledge our partners in crime, if you will, the accounting firm of Clifton Larson Allen. And helping us make the changes that we needed to in order to get the award.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And so that concludes our presentation. I would just mention that after the meeting's over, we would like to have the board members and the staff take a photo with the award over here a little later as soon as we adjourn.
Definitely. Thank you, Don. Jonathan, I know you've been here too. It's pretty neat to be getting awards for excellence. Given how far we've come, it's certainly a treat to be here. Thank you, Don. All right, Lori, you're up. Little training action, huh? Andy, how are you?
Afternoon. Good morning still.
Yeah. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. While Clifton Larson is here for their final audit procedures for 3 weeks, we take this opportunity to have them, as our business partner, provide some board governance training. I believe the last time that we had this was maybe a few years ago. There's a few new faces, and we thought we'd take this opportunity to go over what the board's roles and responsibilities are. Should be just a short presentation. And at this time, so I'd like to turn it over to Mandy Merchant. She is the audit principal for Clifton Larson Allen.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. It's really hard to follow what just happened. I was honored to work with CalHFA for the first year that I'm doing a CAFR, and I must tell you there was a lot of sweat and some late nights going into a first year of doing a CAFR. So, but really nice job by everyone. So this year, our second year, I'm sure it's going to be just as smooth and probably even better. So look forward to the one that we'll be issuing later this year. So. All right, so this training is for you all. This is for your benefit. This is I come in every year and I present and talk to Commissioner Gunning, and we talk about stuff, and, it's very important that agencies and the board particularly get some sort of training during the year. So this is just kind of something to kind of refresh everything for you all. I'm going to kind of go through slides. If you have any questions, please just feel free to raise your hand. This happened at a very unique time. Last week, I actually did my own board training. I'm actually going to be on a nonprofit in the Pittsburgh area, and I went through a board training. So I learned a lot of this stuff last week. So hopefully I can share some of the stuff that I learned last week with you all today. So, okay, first of all, just the objectives, just, overview. We're going to look at your accountability and fiduciary responsibilities. And then we're also going to look at the specifics for CalHFA for the board. Also at the end, we're going to do a little bit of fun, if you can say it that way. We're going to look at some fraud facts, kind of some interesting stuff to see, kind of like what's out there. The first thing I just kind of want to mention as I was looking over your guys' website and doing a little bit of research is just, the primary role of the board is to protect the public's interests and then make sure the agency fulfills its mission. And I was looking at CalHFA's mission, and I'm sure you all have it memorized, but just to make sure, to create and finance progressive housing solutions so more Californians have a place to call home. Really great mission. So every time you come to these meetings, that should be in the back of your head. So the decisions that you're helping make, that should always be there. Is something you're voting on going to promote that mission? So always keep that in mind. So a couple of things, fiduciary duties. So we have duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. So we're really going to hit on duty of care and duty of loyalty. But like duty of care, first of all, it's just basically overall your board responsibilities. And just thinking of all the decisions that you make is, what would a prudent person do? I always say, spend the money like it's your own money. So keeping an eye on that. Also, duty of loyalty. You got to keep the best interests of the agency before your own. You don't want to be very much self-interest. So always thinking about CalHFA before you think about yourself. And then duty of obedience is just thinking about the laws and regulations, just making sure you're operating the decisions, the agency is operating within the laws that govern the agency. Okay. So duty of care, just to kind of go in a little bit more, obviously attending the board meetings. While you're at these board meetings, just make sure you're participating, ask the questions. It's very important of the committees that are established, as the committees have information that come out of them, make sure you guys are talking through that and go over that information. Participating in the board actions is very important. As we just heard a little bit ago, you weren't able to pass the board action because people weren't here. So making sure your presence of those board actions can go through. Knowing the books and records. So we will talk a little bit more about the financial responsibilities, but make sure when as I will be presenting later this year, the financial information, listen to what we're saying and consider that as you're making decisions going forward for the agency. And then obviously at the end, just being aware of legal requirements, making sure the agency is operating. You're this big governance for all of them. You're a last resort for, internal controls, keeping an eye on the agency. So it's very important. You all have a very important role for CalHFA. And another thing I learned this last week, which I thought was interesting, is, keep everything confidential, what goes on the board meetings. If it's a closed meeting, another thing is I heard too, don't have meetings in the parking lot, bring it to the boardroom. So, so make sure everyone's engaged in those conversations. Don't be having, kind of side conversations unless it's part of a committee meeting also. Okay, duty of loyalty. The first one, written policies of conflicts of interest. I know every year you all file the annual Form 700, making sure you're filing that timely, make sure it's accurate, because it really can get the agency in trouble if something's not properly disclosed. And it also can get you in a little bit of trouble. Basically, anything that gets out in the public, that's something you don't want to see if you have any kind of conflict of interest. So that's very important that you get those done on an annual basis. As we mentioned before, making sure that you don't make any decisions that help your own personal gain. So, if you have some sort of relationship or connection with maybe someone that you're going to be giving a loan out to, make sure that there's some sort of disclosure. Don't think about yourself. Make sure it's the right decision for the agency. And then the third bullet point regarding the IRS is that's just related to self-dealings. So just making sure, I'm sure no one does have any transactions with the agency. And then finally, don't take gifts from anyone. It just doesn't work out. So just make sure you keep an eye on that. I always say appearance over substance. So even if it's a $5, it's still usually not worth it. It can, get out and hurt your reputation. Okay, so governance versus management. Some boards, this can become a little bit of a gray area, where boards kind of sometimes cross the line and start trying to do management responsibilities. So that's just one thing just to kind of keep in mind for where governance kind of the line stops and what is management's role. So just governance is the ultimate responsibility of the board. And then staff management is management. So just keeping an eye on that. And then just the bullet point, the board is responsible for overall supervision and control of operations. I always like to say that the executive director has one boss. You all should be unified when you communicate to the executive director. She shouldn't have 13 possible bosses coming at her at all times. So just keep that in mind when communicating with Tia. Let's see. Okay. So the next part, we're going to talk about the purpose of the governing board. And this is just a couple of things just to highlight, just to refresh your memory. Obviously, I think sometimes the future, keeping an eye on just not the decisions of today that might affect the next couple days, months, but, what's the 5-year plan? What's the 10-year plan? Keeping that in perspective, I think sometimes that's, succession, all of that kind of stuff, like who might fill your position one day. Keeping all that kind of stuff like in perspective after going through this. Obviously, we talked about the mission, being an effective board, really helping out the agency, sit back once in a while and think to yourself, or is there things we're communicating to them, helping progress? Are we moving in the right direction? And then operations, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, keeping an eye on the operations of the agency. Do things need to change? Do we need to provide some feedback? And a couple of things I didn't put up on here, but I went back through and just looked at your statutory role. You all are responsible for enact annual financial solutions that permit the issuance of bonds. That's one of your big things, decisions on the bond issuances. Enact the agency's operating budget and business plan, which I know you all are doing. I was looking through your board minutes or watching them. Authorize the sale of debt obligations, securities, and approve any major contracts, which again, that's something you all do on the annual, each board meeting, you have something like that going on. So just so you remember all that kind of stuff, that is coming from statutory roles. And then, actually, that's my next slide, excuse me. Okay, so additional requirements. All right, so this is just kind of refreshed about the open meeting requirements. Just kind of bullet pointing the different requirements about the meetings conducted within 10 days of advance. Only vote on matters that are on the notice and the agenda. So this is all very specific to CalHFA. So this is a good thing just for you guys to know what's going on. The closed sessions, they're limited. I don't think you guys have many of those. And then I don't really think you all really even have emergency meetings either. But this is your open meeting requirement that is for CalHFA in particular. Okay. Now, we talked about this a little bit ago, but again, duty of disclosure of economic interests. I can't harp on this enough about related parties. I have, over my years, worked with some boards. I had a board that was like all almost family members on the board that were related to the executive director. It was in a very small town, but it was one of those boards that as we were going through the audit every year, we were kind of like, ooh, this is kind of weird, but how do you approach this? Like, how do you walk into that board meeting and say, I have some issues? But luckily I wasn't the boss at that time, so my boss had to do it. So he came back alive, so I thought that was pretty promising. But just putting that perspective, again, I can't harp enough to you all just to make sure you're always thinking about that. And if you file your Form 700 and something changes, please file another one. Don't wait to the following year to update. And there is some related party transactions that are okay, or but it's just not worth it, and you have to disclose it. So it's just worth not having them. Any questions on related parties since I like it so much? Okay. Okay, so financial reporting responsibilities. So 3 main groups, obviously. And what I wanted to elaborate on this for you all, which is not up here, but just talking about your due dates. I don't know if you all are aware of all the different due dates that the agency has. So because you issue bonds, on an annual basis, you're required to submit to EMA, which is an online filing system. And that's every 180 days after the year end. You have to send in your audited financial statements for all the different, the bonds that you've issued over the years. You also have your state requirement to submit in since you are part of the state's audit. So that's right now, the due date is 11/1 of every year, and I know there is some possibility that's going to be changed to the end of the year. Now that you do the CAFR is due 6 months after year, so that is one of your reporting requirements. And then finally, because you receive federal awards, you have a requirement to submit to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse 9 months after year end. So that is currently the bigger picture reporting requirements that are out there for you. So I thought I would just bring this to your attention. There'll be a quiz at the end, so I hope you remembered all those dates.
Due dates.
Okay, and then just with that said, you all have a responsibility for financial oversight. Not just one person on this board is responsible for that. So again, when you see the annual financial statements, if you go online and look at the quarterly financial statements that are posted, keep an eye on that stuff. Ask questions. Challenge if you think it's worth it. But that's your overall responsibility. You just don't want anything ever to really happen at this agency, and they always go back to the board. They point up, and you're the top. So just be very prudent with that and keep an eye on that, and just be diligent so that you can answer questions, which is really important. And with that also is just, the way you manage the financials is, are there enough internal controls? Is the agency have enough going on? Is Lori have enough access or lack of access? Who below her? Is everything segregated? Is the board doing enough approval? So keeping that all in mind as things go on, and that should be some maybe, I'm not sure, I know right now you have a risk team, and I'm sure they'll be doing something kind of analyzing that for you. Just thinking about that as, as meetings go on throughout the year. Okay, so then you guys also have 2 advisory committees that we wanted to touch on really quick. So obviously you have the Audit Committee. Who's on the Audit Committee? Okay, all right. Well, this is for you. All right, so first of all, the role of the Audit Committee. So this is now, this is the people that I need to talk to, because I would like to be recommended to be the auditor. But obviously, you make the recommendation for the selection and retention of the auditors. So after the annual, right now you guys have done every 5 years, or you sometimes extend contracts, but a request for proposal will go out, and then there will be, selection committees, and then you all are responsible for making that selection. Also, if you're external auditor, we do issue any audit findings. You should be reviewing them. And then talking to the agency, what are they doing to correct these? What's their corrective action plan, which will be published if there is any audit findings. But talking to them, how are we going to prevent this in the future? How do we get rid of this? What have we changed up in our controls so this doesn't occur again? And then obviously you guys do report to the board. And I don't know how often do you all report to the board? Is it on an annual basis or?
Twice a year, typically after every meeting.
Okay, that's great. Okay. And then again, just reviewing the committee's charter, making sure there's anything new or removed, but keeping an eye on that on an annual basis. So that is your responsibilities. And then the other committee is the Executive Evaluation Committee. So this one, who's on this committee? Okay. Oh, wonderful. All right, so this one, again, I saw lots of activity last year when you guys were evaluating TIA and then other exempt individuals, doing the evaluation of the executive director, developing the compensation policies. So I did see a lot of activity last year, and I'm sure this year, once I watch all your meetings, I'll see more. But just keeping this all in plan. I think the last one to me is very important. It's just always keeping an eye on the succession. You got a lot of key players here at the agency, analyzing, their length of service, how long is Lori going to be here? What's the plan for Lori? And looking at all the key positions and making sure, you know, you got the right people are in the right spots to make sure that it all kind of transitions nicely so it doesn't affect the agency. And then the next couple slides is a couple best practices. You know, people in the audit committee, I hope you two know GASB. We're very well versed in GASB, but a basic understanding of governmental accounting. At least one financial expert on the team. And then just having, you know, meaningful discussions as part of the audit committee. And then finally, this is our favorite word in the audit world is professional skepticism. Always just exercising that. So that's definitely a buzzword in my field. And then just right here, just a couple more, just come duties. You know, reviewing the independent auditors. You know, the next one where we talked about the internal controls, thinking about that. The accounting policies, and then obviously reporting to the board. Any questions from the audit committee? No. All right. So, my last one, fund fraud facts.
I have a question.
Yeah.
May I? And please don't interpret this as an exercise of my professional skepticism. But your firm's service to this board is in what year?
We are in year 8.
Year 8?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So, a couple of things just want to put out there, and I just find fraud very interesting, and it's something that should always be in your mind wherever you work. You know, at your whatever your day job is. Always thinking about, is there enough controls in place? Is there enough policies, procedures to make sure this doesn't happen? Because these statistics, they kind of blow your mind sometimes when you kind of look at this. So this first one, it's always, you know, tips are the number one way they find fraud. Everyone always thinks it's the external auditors. It isn't us, unfortunately. We don't find it. It's your people. Your people usually internally, or your third parties usually find it. And also with the hotlines, now you guys do have a state hotline. So that's good, but that's a good thing to have as a resource because hotlines are one of the number one places that it comes from too. We find it's from the hotlines. This one I like. Fraudsters who had been with the company longer commit the most fraud. So
She looks at Lori.
I'll look at all your employees. No, but again, this is just kind of some information to show you out there. You know, that the top left one I like because it kind of just shows if you have some sort of monitoring, you know, you guys got a lot of robust systems in place. You know, you have a great IT department, you got the risk department, so you got a lot there. So that's just kind of showing, I'm not sure if you guys are doing surprise audits yet, but all kinds of stuff that's out there to kind of show you. And interesting too that only 4% of perpetrators had a prior fraud conviction, so usually it's first-time offenders that, you know, it's always that person you never suspect usually commits it. And then the last one is just kind of like, it just kind of starts from being active. You know, if you have IT controls, it's least likely that you're going to have a fraud occur. And then as it kind of ramps up, you know, how if a fraud is detected by accident, it costs more. So it kind of goes through showing you as a progression as you have these different steps in place, you know, what's the best and what's not the best for you. So. And then the last one, again, is just showing you who finds it. You see that external audit's at 4%. Sorry about that. Wish I could get that number up for you all, but again, just kind of putting some information out there. So just in all with this is just keeping this in the back of your mind. I ask Mr. Gunny every year, I was like, how would a fraud get committed in this agency? So I'll be asking that question later on this afternoon too, right. So you better start thinking about that. But, does anyone have any questions from all this? I hope this was helpful. I hope it got you thinking a little bit. And if you ever have any questions, you can always get my contact information. I can always talk to you. And then the last one. The sun's setting on a beautiful day. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Lori, anything to add? You all right? Okay. Okay, let's move on to item number 6. Mr. Flood?
Or is it jury? And jury's available for questions, too.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
members of the board. My name's Larry Flood, and I'm here today in my capacity as Interim Director of Multifamily Lending. We have 3 projects for your approval this morning. The first is number 16-027. It's for North San Pedro Apartments. It's a 135-unit new construction with permanent takeout from our HUD FFB program. It's located in the city of San Jose. Ruth Bakiri is the loan officer for this project, and I'd like to turn proceedings over to her for her report.
And I will ask Larry to do the slides because I can't do slides and speak at the same time. Can you all hear me okay, or does this need to be closer? Is this on? Good? Okay, thanks. Good morning. North San Pedro Apartments is new construction, 135 units located in downtown San Jose in an area that's called San Pedro Square. It's part of a larger development. It's the affordable housing piece of a total of 11-acre development. And in addition to this project, there are going to be 2 other projects which will be mixed use, for sale townhomes, condominiums, and market rate apartments. There will be over 600 units that will be built on this 11-acre parcel, and it will also include retail, office, and parking space. The entire development is scheduled to be completed at the end of 2020, and units will start to go on the market at that time. The location of the project is near the Diridon station in walking distance from a major transit hub for Silicon Valley, and it is in walking distance from what will be the proposed Google campus, which will provide a whole thousands of acres of commercial, retail, and office space. So it's in an excellent location in downtown San Jose, which is already developed and continuing to develop very positively. The project will be 118 studios, 16 one-bedroom units in a 5-story residential building, which is over at-grade parking, and the parking structure contains 49 spaces. The project will feature green building design elements, which will include a living roof, a rain garden, energy-efficient appliances, solar panels, and recycled building materials. The project will also have 2 outdoor courtyards with barbecue areas, benches, outdoor exercise stations, and rooftop gardening beds. The interior spaces will have a gym, office space, community space with a kitchen, laundry, and service spaces. All the units will be handicap accessible and have air conditioning, wireless internet, so it's going to be a really spectacular place to live. 109 of these units are going to be reserved for veterans and tenants who are chronically homeless with disabilities. 25 of the units will be rented to tenants at 50% AMI. Supporting the project will be 2 separate project-based rental subsidies. They will be administered by the Housing Authority of Santa Clara County. One of the contracts is for the veterans, the HUD Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program, known as VASH. That will support 49 veterans. And the remaining 60 units will be project-based housing choice vouchers, and they will support tenants who are chronically homeless with disabilities. Both of the contracts will have initial term of 20 years with a 20-year contract extension. And the project will come with supportive services for veterans through the Veterans Affairs Palo Alto Healthcare Clinic. And the supportive services for chronically homeless will be provided by Home First Services, funded through the county. Home First Services has served the county for over 35 years and is a very well-known and active service provider in the area. The services will include case management, substance abuse, mental and physical health care, education and life skills and social service training. There'll also be recreational opportunities, and all of the tenants will be given an Eco Pass, which is free transit pass to get through the entire Santa Clara County. There will be 2 full-time service coordinators and social service activities, and also full-time on-site security, all of which will be paid by the operating budget of the project. In addition, there will be 15 chronically homeless tenants that will be served by the San Andreas Regional Center. The Regional Center will partner with Housing Choices Coalition and provide comprehensive supportive services geared towards independent living. The 15 tenants will have an on-site coordinator for 30 hours a week, and the cost for these services is paid through the Regional Center. The project will be financed with multiple sources, as you can imagine. First of all, the property has been transferred from the City of San Jose to the developer, First Community Housing. First Community Housing then will transfer the property to the County of Santa Clara, who will then ground lease the property to the borrowing entity for a 55-year term at $1 a year. Citibank will be providing the construction loan of $49,400,000 at an estimated interest rate of 4.84%. CalHFA will be providing the permanent takeout loan of $16,500,000 for 40 years. The interest rate is estimated to be 5.9% and is based on the 10-year Treasury plus a spread of 2.83%. If the rate were locked today, the rate would be more in the range of 5.8%, so we still have some cushion for potential interest rate changes before we lock the rate. The rate will be locked up to 30 days before the Citibank construction loan closing. HCD is a very important partner in this project. They're providing VHHP, Veterans Housing Homeless Prevention Funds, for a loan of $8.54 million and a term of 55 years at 3% interest. And HCD, through this program, is restricting 55 units to veterans, and 79 units are restricted to 50% AMI. HCD, through the AHSC program, which is Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities, is also providing a loan of $8,927,000, also for a term of 55 years at 3%. In addition, the county has approved a Measure A permanent loan of $7.2 million for a term of 55 years. The sponsor will also be providing a loan of $2.5 million, and AHP will be rounding out the group of lenders at $2 million. Tax credit equity is $17.8 million based on 96 cents on the dollar, and the developer is currently negotiating with Raymond James Tax Credit Fund. So the 96 cents on the dollar is the offer that they've made. The construction budget is $39,700,000, which is almost $300,000 per unit. And the project also has a 10% hard cost contingency included in the budget. The developer for this project is First Community Housing, and we have the project manager with us today, Regina Williams. First Community Housing has been a developer in Santa Clara County for well over 30 years. They've provided 3,200 units, new units to the area, four projects are in the CalHFA portfolio, and one which is Lee Avenue, you heard in July. And that one is in the process of closing the construction loan. First Community Housing specializes in building energy efficient, sustainable multifamily projects that are geared for seniors, family, and special needs populations. The property manager will be John Stewart Company, which is a property manager we have a great deal of experience with, and they have been in business since 1978. The borrower for the project is North San Pedro Apartments LP, with First Community Housing as the, of course, a developer. And the general contractor will be L&D Construction, who we also have had a lot of experience with over the past several years. The project is presently in the process of being bid out and getting final contract prices, and we're planning on closing the construction loan in November. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Are there any questions?
Just an observation. Really, my thanks to you and the team for jumping in on this really important transaction. You know, it really is the alignment here with state priorities in terms of the transit-oriented development aspect, in terms of serving homelessness, is spot on. It's a great opportunity for CalHFA. A couple of observations. One is not mentioned in your staff write-up, but this larger site, the master plan site, was also a recipient of an infill infrastructure grant award from HCD that goes back now almost a decade, I don't know, 8 years. You know, we were able to make this site, the state was able to step in and make the larger master plan site possible in a way that would have been very hard to do, you know, now with the Google announcement now in play, speculation running rampant. So we kind of got in early, and we were able to you know, basically facilitate the city and basically tying down this whole site and creating affordable opportunities for folks right near the Diridon station, right near Google. That's amazing. Second of all, other observation, we actually, when these projects came in for the VHHP and HSC, they were at that time modeling a total development cost that was 20% less than how they've finally come out. And I don't actually, you know, the total construction cost, $70,000 per unit. You know, we are going through a period of just amazing construction price escalation, particularly pronounced in the Bay Area, statewide, with labor costs going up, supply costs going up. And so, you know, this is the reality that we live in, and I'm glad that collectively the state, the city, the county were able to kind of still make this deal come together and happen even in the face of that, because we can't really wait here. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Ben, for bringing up the IIG. It's been such a huge factor, and all the improvements now are complete. It's been a really big effort on the city and the state's part. So without it, this project couldn't have happened. And also, if this project looks familiar to you, it may be because we did bring it back. We originally brought this to the board this time last year. And due to land acquisition delays that the city encountered, we had to put the project on hold for several months. And so now that it's coming back, it has sustained some cost increases. The developer was successful in getting Measure A county funds, which really closed the gap on the project, so added another partner to the process. It's been very important.
Hi, I have a quick question. First of all, great project. It looks wonderful. When do we think folks will actually be able to move in?
The construction period is, I believe, estimated to be about 20 months, and move-ins will happen within a 24-month period.
Mr. Russell?
Yeah, I would also say this is an excellent project and a great example of what we should be participating in. I just have a quick question about, pursuant to what Ben Metcalf was asking about, but the hard cost contingency reserve, are you comfortable that the 6.1% provides?
It's
sufficient
actually,
buffer?
I think, right now it's at 10%, and then once we get the bids in, the hard cost contingency will be adjusted, but based on final bids, could comfortably go to, 7-8%.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jim.
So this is the type of project we've been talking about, that we want state, federal, local resources to align. But I have to tell you, this was extremely difficult to get all of those parties moving in the same direction. So I commend staff for hanging in and helping to make this work. But what I want to make you all aware of is that when you do start aligning those resources, the cost of aligning those resources, we think we're doing ourselves a favor sometimes by making sure it all works together. But when you start talking about our monitoring fees, plus HCD's monitoring fees, plus the monitoring fees of the city, plus the monitoring fees of the county, there is really an opportunity there for us to do further alignment. Because I think when we started calculating the monitoring fees, and when I talk about monitoring fees, I'm talking about the loan servicing to watch your loan, the affordability requirements on top of the long ongoing 55 years. We're all looking at the same project for all particularly the same reasons, but we're all charging a cost. And so on the back end, we're adding operational costs that sometimes are extremely high. This wasn't the $100,000 one, was it?
$94,000.
So let me just say this, $94,000 a year is being charged in monitoring costs to make sure that the regulatory agreement gets complied with. I don't know that that's the best use of that money. That money could be being used to provide services for veterans or other homeless opportunities. And so I really want us as a state to be able to work on looking on some of those back-end expenses that come from aligning our resources, because that's a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And then the financing cost that goes with making sure all those monies go together. So it's a good idea in concept, but we need to make sure we take that next step too, to make sure that we're cutting costs where we can cut costs. So I just had to put that out there.
Is there a way for the agency to assume that role?
I think there needs to be conversations, and we've been talking for 20 years about having alignment of asset management. Literally, I went back and I found a 1994 report that recommends how TCAC, CIDLAC, CalHFA, and HCD should all work together on asset management costs. 1994. And so this is something that Ben and I have been talking about too and trying to put our minds around, but we really need to grab that because it just doesn't make any sense. And so in my next report.
And we do a bit of that. I mean, we will defer our on-site visits, for example, to the TCAC visits. So there's a bit of that that is happening. But here I think is a great example where we do have all of us in this deal, and there is more. I agree completely that we can be doing here. So thank you for raising that.
Tia, question on that is those statutory requirements or regulatory requirements?
Both.
Okay.
Both, because I think on HCD's money, they have some, depending on the funding source, they have some statutory and regulatory requirements on what those monitoring fees will be. I think from TCAC and CIDLAC, some of that might be regulatory.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of that is regulatory.
And so.
Jury?
Is it regulatory on TCAC, CIDLAC side or?
The monitoring that occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, on TCAC is federal monitoring. On CIDLAC side, some of it is federal monitoring, and another component is pursuant to state requirements.
So I just put that out there as something.
But I will add,
Sheree, could you come up to the microphone? Thank you. Anyone?
for those of you who don't know, I'm the former executive director of CIDLAC, and this was an issue and a concern that came to my attention in my tenure, given that CIDLAC required reporting every year, while TCAC, its brother-sister agency, only required reporting every 3 years. So one of the changes that was made in 2017 is for TCAC, or for CIDLAC to fall in alignment with TCAC and only require monitoring every 3 years. I think that there are lots of eyes on all of these projects, and TCAC definitely is visiting them and is doing audits every year. There's certain nuances to CIDLAC's process that TCAC wasn't comfortable taking over themselves, which is why we left in place our own monitoring process. But I think there is room for continued dialogue as costs continue to increase on projects. I think we need to look at what we can do collectively to try to push down costs and operational expenses for projects so that we can achieve our goal, which is really production of units given our tremendous housing crisis.
Jonathan, or do you want to follow up?
I just have a question, what that can possibly look like. I mean, we talk like some kind of a unified audit or some other method. Because I mean, $94,000 a year, you could just pay someone to be there on site, you know, like every day.
How about just get out of the way?
And I was gonna say, that doesn't even include the costs that are being borne by the developer for Citibank and the Federal Home Loan Bank.
Or the tax credit investor.
Or the tax credit investor.
Who are also looking at it every year.
Right. So there's, that 94,000 does not include that. And it doesn't include opportunity costs because the resident managers have to facilitate every time someone comes to the facility, they have to facilitate that, and they could be doing other things that could be helping the residents, as an example.
Jonathan, you had a comment?
Yeah, that, it may be a little bit of a heresy, but of course, the other way to address this problem, rather than looking at the back end collaboration, is looking at the front end unit financing limits. And, you know, why do we have to have 4 state agencies doing pieces? Why couldn't we parcel out and say, okay, this state agency will do this project, this one will do that project, and on the front end. And the other thing that occurs to me is that the other cost that that doesn't affect the state agencies in particular, but it's the cost in brain cells and time by the developers who are trying to figure out how to layer all the funding in the first place. So that, you know, on the very front end, just in terms of the per unit capitalization limits of the various funding sources and how those are figured out and put together, that's where the complexity begins.
I was just going to piggyback on what Tia said, and Ben, I think it's a really solid project. This is really exciting. I mean, I think this is what CalHFA should be doing. It hits all the elements of, you know, creative financing, you know, the supportive services who we're serving. It's really, you know, just the synergy of all the entities possible to do a project like this, and the location, and the sustainability around it. I did have a question. I don't think the architect is here. I was just kind of curious on the design, just on the housing piece of the roof, of it being a flat roof, because I know in the past, I know in other construction projects, water intrusion with flat roofs. It looks like there's a little bit of slope on it, but I was just kind of curious on that, and I'm always leery when I see flat roofs come through on high density development. So just curious if you have any knowledge on that design element and, you know, how they're mitigating that.
I don't, but I would call Regina up to see if she has a little bit of input on that. I warned her that I might put her on the spot. So.
Not that at this juncture we can change anything, but I was just curious.
Good morning. The way that we're mitigating it is with the planted green roof. So there is going to be, as you can see here, there's going to be solar PV and solar hot water on some of the roofs, but on the main one in the middle, there's going to be a planted green roof that will help with the management of the rainwater on site. There's also a rain garden you can see to the right there. So there's a system of managing the water as it comes onto the roof of the building and it flows off down certain systems into that rain garden. So it's really a sort of green, planted way of managing the stormwater on the site.
Gotcha.
I don't know about the slope, though. I apologize.
As a former developer of podium buildings, I can offer that typical practice would be to put a 3 or 4% slope in there. So although you
Yeah.
can't perceive it, you're still getting enough.
And it may be there, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell from this elevation
The
if it's
design
there.
preceded me at the organization, but I know that we have significant stormwater management system on the property.
Okay, great. But it's probably true.
Tell us your name.
Oh, hi, I'm Regina Celestin Williams.
Thanks, Regina. And name of your organization.
I'm with First Community Housing. I'm the Deputy Director of Development there.
All right, thank you.
Recently promoted.
Good. Any other comments from the board? Excellent. Jonathan, go ahead.
I would move adoption of Resolution 1824.
Second.
Moved and seconded. You don't need to take a vote, do we?
Yeah.
You did? On each one?
Unanimous. Take a vote.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Avila Farias?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Imbasiani?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Metcalf?
Yes, exclamation point.
Ms. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Resolution 1824 is approved.
Ruth, can you clarify how many of these units are regulated veterans units? Was it
49.
49?
Yeah, I did look into that
Okay.
this morning and verified that 55 of the units are regulated as veterans.
Okay,
And then the other 79
Okay.
are at 50%.
okay,
So the 55 are specific to veterans.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. See if I can get this going. There you are. Okay. The next project is loan number 18-027. This is for Sequoia Knoll. Are we doing Sequoia?
Creekside first? Creekside.
Creekside first, okay. That's number 18-006. It's Creekside Apartment, located in the city of Davis. It is a new construction project that we are providing permanent takeout financing under our small loan program. The loan representative here is Steve Beckman, who will do a presentation. We also have Jeree Glasser-Hedrick here in her capacity as interim multifamily credit officer.
Good morning, board. Hope you guys are well. A special greeting to Mr. Brown, familiar face. I had the pleasure of working for him 20-something years ago. I think when he was a lot less gray and I had hair. I learned a lot from him, and I'm very thankful for, his tutelage. So, yeah, as mentioned, Creekside, yes, is similar to Roos in that it's brand new construction. So we're going to add additional housing stock. This time in the city of Davis, it's 100% affordable. All of them at 60% AMI and below. Housing stock, especially 100% affordable, hadn't been added in Davis for a while, so I feel that's significant. The other similarity with this project is that there is collaboration with HCD's Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities program. They put in a large amount of money. The city of Davis contributed the land, but then for basis purposes, it was converted to a sponsor loan, but it's a 55-year loan with a balloon. So once again, it's 90 units, 81 ones and 9 twos, 100% affordable, as I said, restricted to 60 and below of the Yolo County AMI. Breakdown of those, excuse me, 36 units will be at 25% AMI, 22 at 50, and 31 at 60. And this is all pursuant to the different locality and CalHFA regulatory agreements. Physically, the project will be comprised of 7, 2, 3, and 4-story elevator-served buildings. All of the units will be ADA compliant. 22 of the units will be set aside for tenants that qualify for the HUD 811 program, so they'll be developmentally disabled and or have some other special needs. CalHFA will administer a HUD 811 project-based subsidy for those units. And then the Alta Regional Center will provide the services for those units at no cost to the project. Another thing worth noting is the project will utilize photovoltaic and thermal hot water solar systems to achieve significant energy savings and reduce utility costs for the tenants. And then finally, the total development cost per unit is $381,000 or $381,932. So how do we pay for this? CalHFA will issue $20 million in bonds, and that'll be split into 2 pieces. 18 will be tax exempt, and 2 will be what's called a taxable tail. The taxable tail, as Mr. Metcalf has mentioned, we've just seen escalation in construction costs. Sometimes in the development of a project, you see stuff go up, and so this is how we were able to handle this. The cost increase to this project is adding a taxable tail because they'd already had their allocation for $18 million. CalHFA will make 3 loans, and then I'm going to explain why we have this structure, which is a little bit different. The first lien loan will be $860,000. The second lien loan will be $1,870,000. It'll be a 20-year tranche. And then we're going to put in $3,420,000 in our subsidy money. All 3 of these will come from, as Larry said, our small loan program, and we'll get it out of the FAF bucket. The reason why we did this was with the HUD 811 subsidy, we wanted to mitigate. It's a 20-year term with no serious guarantee of renewal. I mean, you'd think that that would happen, but in order to mitigate that risk, we tranched off a piece to the 20-year, and we made it work. The other reason why we used this structure, and I think all you folks have noticed that the interest rates are a little low, we had the freedom to do that, was that the developer was going to defer a lot of fee. And so in order to have a fee paid back within 15 years to meet tax credit requirements, we had to split it into $1 million and $559,000. So the $1 million will be paid back in 15 years, and then the partnership will put in the other $559,000 as a contribution. So other sources, our good friends at HCD are putting in $10,904,172 from the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program. Wells Fargo, who's also the construction lender, is working with AHP and putting in $890,000. The city of Davis contributed land worth $1,980,000, which once again will be a soft 55-year balloon note for basis purposes. And then there's actually more money from AHSC in the form of 2 different grants that total $912,576. Those are converted into sponsor loans as well for basis. So all in all, the CalHFA financing, which totals $6,150,000, is leveraging almost $15 million in other soft financing. On our first lien loan, our LTV is only 52%, so it's a fairly low risk. I wanted to just say something quick about the developer. You have all the information in the report. Obviously, you saw John Stewart. That's who's going to manage. They're actually part of the partnership. It's a real strong team. But Neighborhood Partners is familiar with CalHFA. Luke Watkins is here with us today. CalHFA actually has 4 different deals that they've worked at with Luke. And the one thing I want to note about this is that this project took a long time to develop. There was a prior developer that tried, and it was Neighborhood Partners with that team coming together that was able to bring this thing to the finish line. So we're excited to be involved with them. Any questions?
I had a couple of kind of questions. One, just big picture, I described as a family housing, but they're all pretty small bedrooms. Was that, I was confused at first reading through who the target population is, and I know there's some special needs units in there. But they're all pretty small units, so.
They're twos.
Okay.
Yeah, they're mostly twos. 81, oh, excuse me, no, I lied. 81 ones and 9 twos, so, yeah.
Okay.
But it is a family project.
Okay.
And 22 of those are gonna be set aside for special needs.
Okay. Of the one bedrooms? Of the one bedrooms or any
Yes.
of them? Okay. And then, another question on just, curiosity, the tax credit pricing here, 91 cents per, relative to I think San Jose was at 96 or so. And I'm just curious, is that, when the project was, locked in negotiating, or was that a function of the project credit quality? I'm just curious why the range.
Luke, where are you at on that?
Market is different in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's more valuable in San Jose.
San Jose is.
We'll get a little more down there.
And if I could provide just a small comment, a lot of equity investment is driven by CRA requirements, and in the coastal, very urban areas, there's much more demand to meet CRA credits, and so you see tax credit pricing be driven up in the urban coastal areas compared to the inland geographies in California.
Thank you. And then my last question is just understanding, again, looping back on the Cal subsidy loan. You mentioned that it's from the FAF bucket. Can you refresh that, like what pot of money we're using to make those subsidies? I think it's a finite amount that we have.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand.
It's the earned surplus, a subset of the earned surplus pool, our internal funds that we've been using for this. And you're right, we do have a limited amount of those funds that we are going through pretty rapidly, and we're looking forward to SB2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, did you want to make a comment?
No, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Luke Watkins, the principal of Neighborhood Partners. And I just want to say I love CalHFA.
You can say more.
No, I'm very loyal to my partners, John Stewart Company, Enterprise. But CalHFA and I go back to 1986. And I think my first project, working for a nonprofit, Davis Community Housing at the time, was the third tax credit project in the state. And it was one of CalHFA's first, I think. 86, right. And you guys probably don't know Dick Finney, who was the director of multifamily housing then. But anyway, I just really appreciate being back because in 2008 the construction program fell apart and I had to hunt around, and Wells Fargo works great as a team, but I love CalHFA. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
So
Great project.
I wanted to just shout out to Jeree because we were trying to figure out how to make this project really work financially and putting the structure together. And this is the first project where we've actually used 811 and as a rental subsidy as part of the financing. Usually when we've used 811, it's come in on the back end to help folks. And so to use 811, which is a new rental subsidy, kind of a pilot program, but to help mitigate those risks, the way it was able to financially structure, I have to give a shout out to Larry and Jeree, who really worked with multifamily staff and the developer to really put this all together and make this happen. Because it's not a financial structure you'll typically see, but we really were wanting to mitigate risk of those particular rental subsidies after the 20 years. And so I'm very happy with how it turned out. It looks a little complicated, but it works. And I'm very pleased because we really wanted to see affordable housing in Davis.
I think this was a project that we were able to get the waiver on from HUD to get the higher income revenues on these units.
811, you mean?
Yeah, on the 811.
Yeah, the project base is I
think
believe the
pay rate
rental
was quite a
subsidies are
bit
at the
bigger
higher.
because of
At
the
the
work we
FMR.
did with HUD, so thank you for that. And actually, we should probably note that that HUD is doing listening sessions later in the fall for an additional $83 million of Section 811 that they are going to be putting out. But we haven't heard that much about it, so that's something we'll need to continue to track.
Yeah,
I'd love to do more of these kinds of projects.
Saw that NOFA out here recently.
It's not,
for
I don't think
the
they put it
listening
out
session.
yet, but it's coming, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just have a general question for a general comment. Thanks, Steve, for dating me back to Cal Mortgage Deputy. But when you mentioned the 1986 tax credits, I was sitting on TCAC for Controller Davis, so.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle right now.
I do have a really brief question, I think, is in the project-specific conditions of approval, it's talking about the rental restrictions by the city of Davis, that we want to be sure that we can allow for a restructuring of rents in the event that the 811 goes away. Could you illuminate us on how those discussions are going, or how that plays out?
I think I'm gonna turn that over to the developer. I haven't been on the front lines with the city of Davis, but it's my understanding from my discussions with staff that Davis has been very amenable to kind of hearing our concerns and building in the float-up language in the event that the rental subsidy goes away, with the acknowledgement that if the rental subsidy goes away, there's hard debt that needs to be paid and there's operations that need to be sustained. And something in the structure is going to need to change in order to ensure long-term feasibility.
The staff at the City of Davis is recommending that it has to go back to the City Council on the 25th of September. The depth of affordability in this project, though, the target population was special needs homeless households, and we ended up using HUD 811, but 40% of the units actually are at 25% AMI. So the city is getting a lot more than they would ever get in most land dedication sites. So they recognize that it's a partnership.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I'll add to my the compliments to the project. Thank you.
Can I just ask a follow-up question, just out of curiosity? That float-up language, I've seen it in a couple of these documents. How often do we ever use that, or is that just a bit, bootstrap?
It's a
belts
bootstrap.
and suspenders. Okay.
When you, because it's a bootstrap specifically when you have rental subsidies that may not be there. So the rental subsidies are helping to subsidize those extremely low regulated rents at like 25% AMI. So should those rental subsidies go away that are making up that difference, then the ability to float up those regulated rents is there to allow the project to continue to be feasible.
And this general policy is consistent throughout the state. TCAC has a float-up provision in the event rental subsidies are going away. HCD does. So kind of bringing us along and in consistency with our other financing agencies, and really what tax credit investors are looking forward to ensure that there's not some sort of a significant feasibility problem if the unfortunate circumstance were to occur that the rental subsidy would not be renewed.
And then just from underwriting for the operating expense reserve, the maximum amount that we're putting in there now is 6 months of operating expenses plus reserves and debt service. And that was one of the other mitigants for the HUD 811 on this project, was that even though we know the developer, we know the team very, very well, we're confident it's going to operate well, we still put the maximum amount in there as a mitigant on the HUD 811 as well.
Any other questions?
I have one brief comment about the energy efficiency of the project. This project is going to be zero net energy. There's a 207 kilowatt PV system on the roof. And I assume you've done a zero net energy project before, but if not, this will be your first. So.
Only in Davis. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve this project as presented.
Second.
It's moved, seconded by Dr. Mbasi. Roll call, please.
Ms. Avila Farias?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Mbasiani?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Metcalf?
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Resolution 1825 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
The final project that we'd like to present this morning, Mr. Chairman, is Sequoia Knolls. This is project number 18-00. No, this is 18-027. and it's located in the city of Fresno. This is an acquisition of an existing 100-unit property, and Steve Beckman will provide the presentation on this one as well.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different in that it's essentially preservation. This is a project that's in our portfolio, 100-unit. Granted, we only have 20% of the units restricted. This gets to stay in our portfolio, and we're thankful for that. We're going to use this process called a transfer of physical asset because it's changing ownership. And in that process, the agency will get about a $600,000 yield maintenance fee from this. So it is 100 units, as Larry said. There's 36 ones, 42s, and 24 threes. As said before, 20% are restricted to 50% of the Fresno County AMI. One of the nice things about this and preserving this is that the bond regulatory agreement burns off in about 8 years. So with our 40-year term, we're going to get essentially 36 additional years of affordability on this. The project is 11 1- and 2-story buildings. It's always performed well in our portfolio. It's run at extremely low vacancy, right around 3%, and they've always made debt service coverage all along. Our asset management folks have said, glowing things about it. It's also been well kept. It's in excellent condition as we speak. When we did the physical needs assessment, they only called for a little over $35,000 of immediate needs. So what we did with that is, when we're recasting the financing, our policy is that we put away $1,000 a door in a capitalized replacement reserve. So we'll have a brand new $100,000 replacement reserve, and then what we're going to also put in is the $35,000 that was called by the P&A in there. So we're going to beef that up, and then these needs will be taken care of over time. So financing on this, basically what we did was we can only go to a 90% loan to value. So we pushed our loan to exactly that, and in this case, it's $7,326,000. The new sponsor, the buyer who's coming into our portfolio, will come in and write a check for $1,302,000 at escrow for the down payment. I already mentioned that we're going to get some yield maintenance out of this. The one thing we did with this, just of note, I mentioned on the prior project that we used the full 6 months of operating expense reserve, and even though we knew the developer and are very confident in the team, in this case we backed off to 4. The developer is someone new to us, but they have a very, very strong team, and the reason why we did that was that the project's already in our portfolio. We already know its history, and we know that it's just chugged along great for the whole period of time. So that was the one little tiny difference on that one there. One of the criteria we use is the team members. The managing general partner in this project is Central Valley Coalition for Affordable Housing. They're very well known to us. And then the property manager will be GSF. They're actually known to us as well. They have a couple projects under management in our portfolio, and then they actually have 13 under management with the Fresno Housing Authority. So they're known by them as well. This makes up the team that developed. Bless you. The developer is Archimedes Asset Management. They have multifamily experience. They actually have very deep commercial real estate and residential real estate experience down in Merced County, right down in that market. And so with the managing general partner and the property manager, we're confident that this will be a good team. Questions?
Random question. One of the conditions of the loan is that we get a new phase 1 environmental. I'm just curious if it's a existing portfolio project, why we're doing another environmental. Is that
We'll just get an update.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna make them go through a whole new, no, that, you're exactly right, Ms. Gallagher, that doesn't make too much sense.
Paragraph 29, it says the purchase and sale agreement expires on October 2, 2018. Wow.
Yeah, no, and, good point, there is an extension that I'm sure they'll have to utilize. Is, Lord willing, this is approved, the next thing we do is we go right into closing mode. Yes, and we hustle. Yeah.
That's the fastest escrow closure I've ever heard.
Yeah.
This was actually one of our slots under the FFB HUD risk share. We had 26 slots, and then some of those had fallen out, and we didn't want that very favorable financing. So we hunted around within our own portfolio, and this was a project that made sense to continue to put in that slot for the favorable financing. So the timeline is short, but that federal financing HUD risk share is set to expire at the end of September. And so we wanted to make sure that we took advantage of what we can. Now, we're continuing to advocate for that program to continue, but we wanted to make sure that we were using it, taking advantage of the resources that were available to us.
My question actually follows Doctor's question. I wanted to make sure that we definitely highlighted the fact that we have a plan for the October 2nd deadline, because that jumped out at me as well. And also from an underwriting perspective, you said it, but it's not in here. I think the most compelling thing, reason that we should be doing this is the fact that it is in our portfolio. And so we have operating history of how that is. And so I think when you're looking at this from an underwriting perspective, that's something that you'll want to call out going forward, because that's key. We know this deal. We know this property. We know where the landmines are, and we don't have to exert a lot of, we don't have to have a lot of the concerns that we might not that we might have if we didn't know this property.
If I can just make a follow-up comment to that, I think that projects like this are going to be a very large part of our lending strategy going forward. You know, we will be actively looking at our portfolio for projects that are 5 to 10 years from maturity or at the end of their regulatory requirements, and trying to keep them in our portfolio and extend the affordability requirements.
And I think this board has directed us on a couple of occasions about what is our preservation strategy. And so with Larry and Jeree and our lending staff, they're going to be internal facing, making sure that they're reviewing that and coming up with a robust preservation strategy. So I'm very excited about that.
Thanks.
Can I ask who the borrower actually is? I'm not sure I can. Who's actually borrowing the money?
They're in the process of forming a single asset entity right now. In fact, it's probably been formed at the writing. You know, we hadn't gotten the documents from Secretary of State yet, but it'll be a single asset entity.
Which you might want to, just for the folks. Yes, I was going to say, you might need to expound on that a little bit. It's a single asset entity that will include.
Yeah, bring them. Come up.
Sorry, I need
That's
Lou
fine.
Myers here.
That's a good question.
Yes. This is Lou Myers, and he's with Archimedes Asset Management.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, the borrower has been formed. It's Sequoia Knolls LP, very original.
Made up of?
So it has been formed.
And who's it made up of?
Sequoia Knolls LP consists of, the organizational chart is in the file. I'm not sure your file. It consists of the Central Valley Coalition of Affordable Housing, and then one other GP, but a non-managing GP, and then 2 limited partners. My organization, Archimedes Asset Management, and then an affiliate.
So those are the borrowers.
Okay. Got it.
California Coalition of Housing, Archimedes, came together and formed this single asset for the purpose of being the borrower in the transaction.
Understood. Great.
Internal question, so the repayment of the loan, what is that capital, what does that go within CalHFA?
It goes to repay the old loan, and then they'll have a new loan. I mean, yes, so.
So we're gonna take out the old loan.
So you had a seller who had property in our portfolio. He's selling the property to these folks, and these folks that loan will be paying back the old loan.
And the repayment to us,
Yes.
2.2 million, we're
Is that the right number? I don't know what the numbers are.
I'm looking at 2.76,
Yeah, the
2.776.
outstanding balance.
Does that, I mean, but that goes into a different bucket back at, because we've got one financing source coming in that repays a loan to us. Where does that,
Is that going back to the seller? You have to.
Well, it's a loan repayment to us, so we're holding that cash now presumably. We've
Yeah,
employed
they'll pay
different
off-
funds.
They're gonna pay off our old loan, yes,
Yeah.
and then there's gonna be actually an addition to that.
Sure.
We'll take a yield maintenance of $600,000.
Okay, but we're paying, if I'm understanding correctly, we're taking one bucket of money, financing, seven
That's
million.
what it is, yeah.
Pouring it in, takes out the loan, that means 2 million that,
Yeah.
And the seller's gonna get some funds, isn't the seller?
Well,
gonna
the
get some?
original bond, the original loan was financed in a bond transaction.
okay,
So the repayment of that loan will go back through the indenture with those
got
bonds.
it, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other?
Question was if we redeploy them.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. I don't have the language.
Any other questions,
Wait.
comments?
I see Mark waving his hand.
I just want to make clear with regard to Ms. Gallagher's question about the phase one. This will be an acquisition of the property by a new borrower. And in order for them to be able to take advantage of the safe harbor under the environmental laws, they have to have a phase one prior to acquiring the property.
It's already been completed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, so any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution number 1826.
The second, motion and second? Roll call?
Ms. Avila Farias?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Imbasciani?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Metcalf?
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Resolution 1826 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, where are we here? Agenda, let's see. You're up. Yep. No place like home. You wanna do it from here?
Yes. Can I?
Yes.
Okay. Last week, September 5th, the Housing Finance Agency notified our participating counties who have partnered with CalHFA on our special needs housing program of the program's wind down schedule. And you all may recall, our special needs housing program was a voluntary participation program that upon the expiration of the original mental health service account, MHSA, Mental Health Service Act funds, that agreement expired in 2016. It went from 2008 to 2016. We fulfilled the obligations under that original agreement. We begun to speak to counties about voluntarily contributing their funds. While we were having those conversations, simultaneously, the legislature was going forward with the No Place Like Home. So we wanted to have a program that basically stood in the gap or stood to bridge, and that was at the direction of the board that they wanted us to continue to provide this service. So the Special Needs Housing Program served as an effective bridge for the timing gap between the Mental Health Service Act going away, housing program going away, and the No Place Like Home program coming online. And so with the launch of the No Place Like Home, which will be administered by our sister agency, the Department of Housing and Community Development, we are in the position of trying to wind down and transition the CalHFA Special Needs Housing Program to allow the counties to focus on submitting their No Place Like Home proposals to the Department of Housing and Community Development, who recently released their NOFA, I believe it was August 15th, for their first tranche of those funds. We have heard some initial concerns back from some of the stakeholders in the counties. Some of those include counties may not having the internal capacity to underwrite special needs housing loans. whether the funds that have been voluntarily deposited into our special needs housing program can serve as the jurisdiction's local match when they're competing for the No Place Like Home, and needing more time during this wind down or transition phase, but potentially they had gone to their board of supervisors and were sitting on cash that they were ready to deposit, whether or not we would provide some additional time for that. So we have been in contact with those counties. We will continue to work closely with them to ensure that we have an efficient wind down and transition of the program. We are soliciting written comments regarding their concerns that the counties have, and we're going to be working with them during this transition period because we want them to be very successful in their opportunities to take advantage of the No Place Like Home funding. So we will be engaging and working closely with those counties during the transition period. And so we just wanted to provide you with an update to let you know what was going on with that program. And then we'll be working closely with HCD on, are there portions of the Special Needs Housing Program or the former Mental Health Service Act program that are better suited over at HCD, specifically some of the monitoring. So when we start talking about duplication of efforts and whether things would be better suited over at HCD, we want to be able to sit down with them and have those conversations so we don't have duplications of efforts and can reduce operating costs to the extent that we can. So that's just a little update, and I don't know if Ben has anything he wants to add. But.
I do a couple things. So first of all, I mean, back to our conversation earlier in the agenda, like, we don't think it makes sense to have two state agencies running parallel programs, doing parallel things. And so I think we have to figure out how we can leverage each other's capacity effectively. I think that is what the wind down is supposed to effectuate. That said, with No Place Like Home, will be issuing a $2 billion bond. And what we don't want to do is inadvertently chill the willingness of counties to step up to the plate with additional MHSA funds beyond and above and beyond what the debt service, allocable share would be to service that bond. So I think that's the conversation I want to have. The idea of counties going to their other MHSA funds to provide a local match is a really good one that we want to figure out how to make sure we're supporting. The other observation that I would make is it is not a sure thing that we will have a No Place Like Home program. We are proceeding forward with issuing our notice of funding availability. I went out, we're meeting with counties, we're selecting applications, we're doing everything as if it were a sure thing. It is not quite yet a sure thing. We we have had two things going on right now. There's obviously the engagement with the local courts through the state validation action with the Attorney General's office. There's also a Proposition 2 that was moved to the ballot by the legislature and the governor. Both of those are in progress. Both of those sort of seem to be looking favorable. But there are still reasons why they could. So I think the other thing that we need to do is also just be aware that we're tracking this and be ready as CalHFA also to, I guess, refrain from pulling the plug at the last minute if things were not to be favorable, particularly after that coming out of the election in November.
Yeah, I have just one add-on to that, since I chaired the CHFA meeting when we did the bond issuance for the validation. I would suggest that perhaps your next meeting, you may want to have a closed session to talk about the litigation.
Okay, I'll note that.
Well, thanks, Vince.
Thank you, Vince.
Mr. Russell.
Well, some comments on that. I think I really want to land heavy on the statement that this measure has not yet passed. I think that's something key. There has been a disturbance in the force with this letter going on. Just say.
Big disturbance.
And it's not just the counties who are the clients. It is the affordable housing developers. And so I'm aware of 6 developers with approximately 9 projects that feel uncertainty because of this, and uncertainty is never a good thing.
Right.
And I'd like to make sure that we do characterize it, that how it's been described to me by those people who have made use of this, it is a service, not a program. And there's something about the nimbleness and the fact that that is the money that these counties own, that we, as CalHFA, have been providing a service to help them smooth out cash flow because you have a volatile revenue stream, their ability to deposit funds so that they can, rather than invest in programs, they have the opportunity to use their MHS funds now for development and with some predictability, right? There's some, I think there's a use. My point here is I'm a little concerned that we've rushed to close something down that has created some uncertainties. I'd like us to be very thoughtful about that because you will be getting a lot of comments back. We will be
Jerry and I are already getting them.
And I'm not sure I would really call this parallel programs doing parallel things. This is, again, I'll go back to, it's not a program, it's a service. So I just wanted to put it out there that I think this is a valuable service we're providing. I think it's very consistent with our mission, and I'd like us to be very thoughtful about how we proceed from here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I have enough gray hair that I'm going to give a little history on this. I think it's important. I disagree that it's a state program, and let me say why. To go clear back to the beginnings of the Mental Health Services Act, part of the reason we have the lawsuit that we currently have around No Place Like Home is that one of the principles that was established very early on is that MHSA funds are not state funds, they're county funds, allocated directly to the counties by formula. And that was one of the dynamics that we had to deal with in the creation of the housing program initially, which was created due to the fact that there happened to be a surplus of cash in the first couple of years of the development of the MHSA program. And so there was an agreement by the counties and the state to carve out $400 million of that cash surplus and use it to create this housing program. But that was done with the recognition, again, of this underlying principle that MHSA funds are not state funds, except for the administrative dollars on the top. So then the other dynamic at work in when it comes to the counties dealing with what is a very volatile and somewhat unpredictable funding source is that they would, in the course of the way it works, from year to year, have significant surpluses in their MHSA allocation. And any money that's not spent by the county within 3 years devolves back to the state and is allocated back out to the other counties by formula. And so counties that haven't committed funds risk losing them. And part of the genius of the way that both the MHSA housing program and the special needs housing program was created is that when counties chose to allocate that money to CalHFA, it was considered committed and expended, which then allowed the county in question to have the time to develop a pipeline and deal with the development timeline of housing development. So, you know, those are all dynamics that were in play. And so that when we talk to people in the counties, they would, most of them very vociferously argue that the special needs housing program is not a state program. It's a county decision, and it's a tool that enables counties to set aside funds to drive their development of a pipeline of supportive housing that's desperately needed for homeless folks with severe mental illness. So I would hope the staff of all the various agencies spend some time going back and understanding the structure of the Mental Health Services Act at its heart and how it functions from the perspective of the counties and what specifically, you know, the counties that have chosen to participate in the special needs housing programs have done that because they don't have an alternative organization in their county that can fulfill the same role that CalHFA is filling in the use and distribution of those funds.
And I'll let Jerry add as well, but we do not consider the special needs housing program funds as state funds. Even though we are providing the lender services or underwriting on behalf of them, we've continued to classify them as local funds.
I have a couple comments. I've been on the front lines talking to all the counties. I will say that the letter was a surprise to them. Some counties had most recently put funds on deposit with us in the summer Orange County specifically approved $50 million, their Board of Supervisors approved $50 million this summer to go towards the SNP program in an effort to help leverage the No Place Like Home program. And so what we're trying to do right now is we're just trying to gather information. I've been on the phone with San Diego, and they've been very vocal. I've connected with all of the pertinent mental health individuals, and really what we're doing is we're soliciting comments. As you might imagine, the geography of California is so diverse that the issues that Orange County and San Diego County are facing are very different from the issues that Tulare County is facing. And so from my perspective, we want to be a partner with local government. This is the way in which CalHFA is assisting the counties is very unique, and what I'm hearing for the counties is it's very necessary given the dissolution of development and the lack of staffing at the local level. The service that CalHFA has been providing is important. And so what we're going to try to do is come up with a solution that will work for everybody and will not put a kink in the pipeline of homes for mentally ill homeless people, which is what we don't want to have happen. So we're going to try to keep the pipeline going. You know, we're going to try to the extent we can, wind down our program, but we're committed to helping in every way we can to get the projects that are in the pipeline through the pipeline and to the finish line.
One quick question. Is there a cost recovery within the SNHP program? Do you know?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We have a loan origination fee, and MHSA, we subsidize the MHSA program, so it cost CalHFA money. But when we negotiated the voluntary contributions in the special needs housing program, we negotiated a fee structure that was the counties were okay with, that participated, and we were okay with it covering our costs to provide the service. So we do charge an origination fee, and go ahead.
We actually charge a fee on the amount that is on deposit with us, and then once we originate a loan, we charge an origination fee and we charge a monitoring fee. Some of the counties are amenable to administering these funds on their own, but the question from the counties is, well, are we going to get our administrative fee back that was captured when it went on deposit? And of course, to the extent a county is amenable to taking the funds back and administering them locally, they will be credited any admin fee that was taken on funds that have not yet been expended.
Just the last word is, I guess, I understand the necessary function that this program has provided within housing production. I don't understand the necessity of ending it. And so if we're struggling to mitigate the impacts of ending it, it might suggest that the value is there, and I will leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Steve. I want to draw everyone's attention to the reports that are usually attached to the agenda. Is there any other items board members want to bring up at this time?
Yeah. Can I follow up on something? We talked a little in the vein of the board governance training at the beginning of the agenda and some of the prior conversations we've had on, and then some of the conversations that came up with these loans. We've had a conversation about, what loans should we be acting on as a board, and should we be focusing more broadly on the parameters of the program and less on the nitty-gritty of the specific loans, except when they're outside those parameters. And one of the comments that came up earlier was, looking at the project that we in Fresno, where we were mining our portfolio for projects that are nearing the end of their preservation period. I don't have any sense of where what our portfolio looks like in that, and having that kind of high level view would be really helpful, and rather than some of the delinquency reporting I think we talked about is sort of less relevant now. And
so we were trying to gather enough information so we could come back at this meeting with a larger report specifically like you asked for, but we weren't quite ready. But Rose McCullough, if she is here, Rose McCullough and Jeree have been working frantically about reviewing our portfolio. We also have the our outside consultant who came in and did some restructuring of asset management. And I think by the end of the year, we'll be able to come to you with a larger, kind of bigger picture where we are. It's becoming more and more clear as we get down, and a lot of that was a data entry issue. Garbage in gives you garbage out. And so Jeree and Rose have done an excellent job cleaning up our systems. So we actually know what's in our pipeline, what's in our portfolio. And so we will have, I think, a clearer picture of that by the end of the year. One of the things that we had come to you and which initiated these conversations is staff wanted you all to delegate some more authority. And then when we saw that our data wasn't as good as it should have been, we were hesitant to come to you and ask you to delegate anything to us. Until we did a little more cleanup on that. But staff has been working on that, also on the reporting. We know that we were in a different era with our single family reporting, and so switching that to a more, what do the trends and housing markets look like? You have also mentioned that. And so we have been working on that. We've been meeting probably every week, discussing and cleaning up. From a high level, our multifamily portfolio looks pretty good. We do have a significant number of our portfolio, I want to say 10% or so, that looks like it's in that 5 to 10 year range, which is why we are making the decision that multifamily will be doing a lot of internal looking, and a preservation strategy was because we saw a significant portion of that looks like they're coming to the end of their regulatory period. So hopefully by the end of the year, first quarter of 2019, we'll be able to come to you with a solid big picture report. Rose or Jeree, did you guys have anything to add?
Just wanted to add that overall, the preliminary analysis shows that our portfolio is quite strong. Our delinquency rate is very minimal. Those handful of projects that are on our watch list, most of them have regulatory issues or not fixing certain things, but overall, financially, we're very sound. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, I think the question though is what it looks like, and I agree with Eileen that that'd be helpful to see going forward. Yeah.
Okay.
I just have one observation on the update on the business plan is that while it's, we expected to have the challenge on new lending in the multifamily arena, it is, as Mr. Gunning would attest, historically such a relief to see such strong activity in supporting single family home ownership in the state of California, which in the very not too distant past was impossible for us. So it's really good to see that.
Yeah, I think we had our strongest year ever on our single family side. We helped over 7,500 homeowners this past year. So, very good. Thank you, single family.
Is there anyone in the public that wants to make a comment?
I have one more question.
Oh, okay, go ahead, sorry.
It's a process question, really. I know the last meeting, we got copies of the Color of Law, and I think on October, the author is going to be here. I'm just curious. I haven't read it yet. I will eventually read that.
Read it before October.
I know, so I'm just curious about the format for that and just what's
Melissa, do you have a kind of an outline or a format for?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Rothstein has agreed to spend 30 to 45 minutes sort of giving us information about the color of law and the current situation. And then he's asked us to be prepared to ask him questions and to have a more thorough discussion. And so I would ask the board members to think about what type of questions we might ask and get his opinion. First read the book.
You read
and
the
then
book. Okay.
what type of questions we might have for him about how the state might change sort of some of the outcomes that have happened in the past and stuff. So he would welcome that. And so I figured that the time of the meeting will be approximately 2 hours.
Thank you.
And this does present a rare opportunity for us to actually engage with the academic and get some dialogue. So I'm hoping that you will all read the book and take advantage of this. I mean, this book is kind of nationally acclaimed and people are reading this and it's really quite enlightening, so.
I would just like to say I started the book just last week, and it's very
Depressing.
disturbing and depressing, yes.
That's what Jonathan said.
But it's important.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, if I may add, we hosted annually, the San Diego Housing Federation hosts a fair housing conference once a year, and we had him as our keynote speaker last year, and it was really remarkable. The book is drier than he is in person. He's got quite a wit. The history he tells, it is hard to take in it, and it's eye-opening, and I think a lot of people who were in the room, we had a conference of 250. CalHFA was, I hope, proud to be a sponsor, part of one of the title sponsors. But I think it was really illuminating, and it speaks to so many issues that are very current now. It is not just history, it is the prelude to the present.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks
I
for
think we do
putting
have
that
a
together.
public
I know I
comment.
saw that.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
Melissa, go ahead.
If I might ask, we have a motion on the floor. We held it open for arrival of a member for a vote. If you approve, I'd like to ask the member for their vote.
Please do.
Okay. Ms. Avila Farias, we have a motion open for the approval of minutes from the July 12th, 2018 meeting, and I would like to take your vote.
Yes, I move that we approve them.
Thank you very much. And with that, we have approval of the meeting minutes from July 12th, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. Yes, please identify yourself and come forward.
Members, I'm Farrah McDade. I work for the California State Association of Counties, CSAC, and we represent all 58 counties in California. It's great to see so many familiar faces here, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'll be brief because I know I'm standing between you and lunchtime. I was here today to listen to the conversation about the wind down of the special needs housing program. We do have significant concerns from our members, as you've heard from your board members as well. It was a very abrupt wind down, a 60-day wind down, and we believe that this service, for which we're grateful to CalHFA for providing, is complementary to when No Place Like Home comes online. So ending it because No Place Like Home is hopefully on the horizon doesn't quite make sense to us. So we're willing to work with CalHFA and other interested parties and other agencies to figure out how we can maybe continue this service in a way that works for both CalHFA. If there's efficiencies with HCD as No Place Like Home rolls out, we're open to that. But I just wanted to say, one, we're concerned about the wind down of the program and stand willing to help to make it a worthwhile program, and it's something that works for CalHFA or HCD, whichever department would have the expertise to do it well. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate the comment.
Under board comments, I was just going to add, I noticed that the website has gone through significant updates, and I think it looks phenomenal of what you guys have done. So I'm assuming
it's mobile friendly.
I love all the graphics. I don't have to read. I can just click on pictures. So thank you.
Hey, Kathy. Awesome. Thanks, Henry.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, if everyone.